Can you see that? You totally can see that. That's so ugly. Hang on. That looks better. I'm just gonna leave that there. It'll be fine. They keep falling. No, I'm gonna fix it. Now we are ready. Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my April wrap up for you guys. These are not all of the books that I will be reading in April because it is the 29th, so technically I do have like 2 full days left of the month that I will be doing some reading in. But because it has been so gloomy and rainy here the last few days, I needed to take the one day of sunshine as my opportunity to film this video, so here we are. A little bit early, but that's okay. I think I will chat through the couple of books that I am still hoping to finish in April at the very end of this video, but for now, I'm just going to go through the ones that I have for sure finished, and I think there are 12. Like last month, I do not have these books ordered in any particular way. They're not even ordered chronologically, so I'm just gonna randomly grab them from kind of where they are over here. So let me just get into it by talking about the first book on top of the stack, which is The Reappearance of Rachel Price by Holly Jackson. This is Holly Jackson's newest release. This is just a young adult mystery thriller type of situation. As I've said many times before, I am a huge fan of Holly Jackson. Normally, I don't really reach for young adult mystery thrillers. It's not really something that I feel super compelled to read a lot of the time, but something about Holly Jackson's books is just different, and I always just have such a good time reading them. However, I think this may be my least favorite of the ones that I've read so far. Generally, the premise of this book is that we are following our main character, Belle, who is the daughter of Rachel Price. And the whole mystery situation of this book is that Rachel Price went missing 16 years ago, I believe, under some very mysterious circumstances. This is obviously something that has been hanging over Belle her entire life. People are always asking her about it. They're making assumptions about her and her family based on what the public knows about the event. So basically one day her father decides to capitalize on the public's general interest in this mystery, and he allows a film crew to make a documentary about it. So that's kind of what you're following in this book. You're watching Belle as she is taking part in filming this documentary and kind of seeing all of the things that is bringing up. But then very early on in the book, this isn't a spoiler or anything, she is walking home from the documentary set and I think we have a friend. Hang on. Say hello. Oh, you're so cute and you do not want to hang out with me. Nice little cameo. Do not go near my Diet Coke. Nice try. I feel like I really left you guys in suspense there, basically. One day she's walking home from filming this documentary and she just notices Rachel Price walking down the street. Just casually. But the real kicker here is Rachel Price does not remember what happened to her. So as I said, this is my least favorite book that Holly Jackson has come out with as of yet. That's not to say that I didn't enjoy it. I still do think it's a very intriguing and engaging mystery. I enjoyed my time reading it, but it doesn't really have the same appeal that her other books have, like the Good Girls Guide to Murder series and 5 Survive. Both of those absolutely loved. But this one just kind of fell a bit flat for me. And I think my main problem with this book is that I didn't like the main character. I found her to be extremely unlikable. And I know to an extent that's not really fair to say because there are a lot of things that have happened in Belle's life that kind of explain why she acts the way she acts, but also that doesn't give her a right to treat the people in her life not as well as she should. So I just didn't really connect with her the way that I've connected to Holly Jackson's other main characters, and it really kind of diminished my overall enjoyment of this book. Another thing that kind of hindered my enjoyment of this book was the fact that this was a very slow build mystery. I feel like for the first like 80% of the book, it's a lot of build up. You're just following Belle as she is collecting clues, but like none of it is super interesting. There are definitely some things that you find out along the way that are like cool, but I just feel like it took a long time to get to the final reveal. However, once you got to the end of the book and you were kind of getting the reveal and the story of what happened to Rachel, all of that was really good. So I'd say like the last 20% of this book definitely made the slow build worth it. I just didn't love getting there. So despite my 2 issues with it, I would still recommend you guys pick this up if you are a Holly Jackson or just a young adult mystery fan, because I do think it was worth it. It just wasn't my favorite. Then kind of going along with the thriller mystery theme I have set here, I did want to talk about What Lies in the Wood by Kate Alice Marshall. I've had this book sitting on my shelf since last January when I got it from Book of the Month, and I knew I wanted to read it eventually because every now and then I do like a good thriller audiobook. I don't think I've ever physically read a thriller Like every single thriller that I've consumed, it's been via audio because I love thriller audiobooks. They're so fun to just like sit down, do a little puzzle, do a little drawing, whatever, while you're listening to the audiobook. It's perfect. And a couple of days ago, I was drawing something for my May reading journal spread and I needed something to throw on. And I saw this one kind of just staring at me. I was like, I've been meaning to read that one. And I've been trying to get more books off of my physical TBR, so I figured this is perfect. So I picked up the audiobook for it and I listened to it in less than a day, really. It was so easy to read. I wouldn't say I necessarily loved this one, but I don't really go into thrillers expecting to be 100% obsessed with them. For the most part, I really like the build-up in thrillers, but then when you get to the end, I'm not super satisfied with how everything wraps up. However, looking back on it, I do feel like I was pretty satisfied with how this one ended. Basically, this book is following our main character, Naomi, I think. And it is revealed in this book that one day when she was 11, her and her two best friends were playing in the woods until Naomi was attacked and she sustained 17 stab wounds to her person. But she did survive and she went on to identify the killer. But over the years since the case was closed, there's been a lot of speculation around it. There are a lot of people online who are not convinced that Naomi truly remembered who attacked her and they're not sure if she put the right person in prison. So one day, many years later, she gets the news that the guy that she ended up sending to prison has actually recently died. So obviously this is bringing up a lot of conflicting feelings for her, so she decides to go back to her small town. Obviously, thrillers gotta take place in a small town. Good checkbox there. And she meets up with the two friends that she was with in the woods that day. And from there on out, she starts to unravel a lot of interesting and new information about that day in the woods. So I definitely think this was a fun read. It's definitely not a book that is going to stick with me in any significant way, but I enjoyed my time reading it. I thought Naomi as our main character was interesting. I wouldn't say I loved her, but I thought she was a compelling main character to follow. And I liked a lot of the other characters that we were following, but I feel like there were maybe a few too many characters introduced in this book for me to truly keep track of them. I just felt like as the book progressed, there were more and more and more people being introduced into this intricate web of everything that happened that day. And it started to get a little bit, fuzzy on who was who. However, I did really like how this ended, and the twist at the end of the book, I think it was somewhat foreshadowed well, and I had an inkling that this was what was going to happen. But like actually seeing it come to fruition was wild, honestly. And I really liked it. And I've been wanting to read something by Kate Alice Marshall for a while. I know this was her adult debut, I believe, but she has a couple of YA books that are more on the spooky side that I've been wanting to check out, so maybe I will do that now that I've picked this one up and generally enjoyed it. Then moving on from that, I do want to talk about one of my 5-star reads for the month. Was this my only 5-star read for the month? I think I had a book that was close to being a 5-star, but I think this was my only official book that was a 5-star read, and that is the Invocations by Crystal Sutherland. This book was everything I could have wanted it to be, honestly. It was so good. Basically, this book is following 3 main characters that are all in some way involved in witchcraft and the occult. One of our main characters is a witch. One of our other main characters has 2 demons tied to her soul that she is trying to exorcise. And one of our other main characters is trying to get into some necromancy to bring her dead sister back. So they all manage to kind of find their way to one another. And it was just so much fun, honestly. One of the main themes that I really enjoyed being explored in this book was the way witchcraft was tied to misogyny, because the overall mystery that's going on in this book is about this supernatural serial killer that is going around and killing women that have gotten involved in witchcraft due to these things called invocations. And these invocations were put on these women by our main character that is a witch, that then grants these women different powers, abilities, whatever you want to call them, to kind of take power back in their own life and protect themselves from the men that have been treating them badly, basically. And I loved how that was done, and I really appreciated how Crystal Sutherland took that as an opportunity to explore misogyny, feminism, all that kind of stuff. I just thought it was really well done. I also love Crystal Sutherland's prose. I feel like her writing is so creepy and spooky, but it's also very beautiful and it flows really nicely, and there were just so many lines in here that I was like, ooh, I love that. Like, I probably will read this book again at some point, and I will probably have to annotate. And I also just really love the general ambiance of this book because it does take place in October and November. Honestly, if you want to pick this up, like if it sounds good, I would highly recommend waiting until around Halloween time because I think it would be perfect for then. And I also just really enjoyed our 3 main characters. I thought they had a great dynamic and they were so fun to follow. So I was in the market for a spooky book at the beginning of April. This one definitely fulfilled that want in my life, and I'm so glad that I decided to pick this up. I even picked up a physical copy of it. I initially read it from the library, but I loved it enough that I needed a physical copy of it, and I'm so glad that that I have one. So this is so good. I'm so glad that I decided to pick it up, and I cannot wait for whatever Crystal Sutherland comes out with next. Then next, I do want to talk about a manga series that I have finally started, and I am so happy that I finally got myself to pick this up, and that is Hat Atier. I still don't know if I'm saying it right. I'm sorry if I'm saying it wrong, but I have been wanting to start this series for so long, and so many of you have recommended it to me, and I'm so glad that I finally decided to pick it up because this first volume was delightful. However, some of you guys have told me that this story gets like darker than you were anticipating, so I'm quite interested to see what exactly that entails. But for now, just know that it was really cute, I guess. Basically, so far, the series is following our main character, Coco, who lives in this small town, and she loves magic, but she hasn't really had an opportunity to interact with it much. Until one day she's in the market and two magical things happen. One, she meets a witch and she sees them do some magic and she's really excited about that. But then a little bit later, or maybe it's before, I'm not exactly sure what the timeline is, she is given this book of magic spells from this kind of dubious looking character. Alright, so she goes home and she's really excited that she has finally seen some magic. She's going to try and perform some herself because in this world I think anybody can learn magic and kind of pick it up. So she performs this spell. It doesn't exactly go as planned, as you could probably have assumed, and she ends up turning her mother to stone. So she seeks out the witch, like not the dubious one, but like the normal one, and she's like, what did I do? Please help me. And he's like, girl, I don't know what you did. So she actually ends up becoming this witch's apprentice so she can learn exactly what she did to turn her mother to stone, and to obviously fix what went down. So Coco has moved into this atelier. She's meeting a couple of other witches. Some of them seem really nice, and I definitely see a lot of good potential for some fun friendships forming. One of them, however, does not treat her quite as nicely. She kind of has a bit of an elitist attitude. She doesn't really like Coco invading the workspace, and she's kind of sabotaging everything that Coco's doing. But obviously because Coco is her main character, she does end up prevailing in her own way. So far, the series has been really cute. I love the art style so much. I just need to show you guys. My favorite one is the drawing of the place that Coco is staying. Like, just look at this. It's stunning. I love it. And I'm just really enjoying this so far. I have checked out the next 3 volumes from the library, and I'm hoping I can read some of them in May. Definitely want to make my way through the series over the next couple of months. It's been a minute since I've had a manga series that I'm like actually wanting to continue. Like, obviously I had Yona last year, but I haven't really come across another manga series that I was super interested in continuing. But this one definitely seems like something that I'm going to really enjoy. I think there are around 12 volumes out now, so I have quite a lot of content to catch up with, and I definitely will be doing so. Then kind of going along the theme of not books really that I have going on here, I do want to talk about Big Panda and Tiny Dragon really quickly. This is kind of a, I still don't exactly know. Cass described it as more of like a coffee table book. It's basically a book filled with really small snippets of more philosophical life advice. And this was so lovely, honestly. I do find the bits of life advice to be, you know, a little generic. They're not gonna change your life or anything, but they are nice little sentiments to live by. For example, the 2 characters, which I'll talk about in a minute, are talking to each other, and this page just says, "You're a good listener," said Tiny Dragon. "Listening has never landed me in trouble," replied Big Panda. So it's just like, stuff like that, you know, like, be a good listener, appreciate the little things in life, appreciate the journey, that kind of stuff, you know? But the main thing that really drew me in about this book was the art style. I've already talked about it. I know, I already talked about it so much in my 24-hour readathon. But it's so freaking cute. And the setup of this book is that it is following our Big Panda and our Tiny Dragon through the season, so there's a lot of really pretty seasonal imagery going on in this book, and it's just really lovely, honestly. Let me show you some of the autumnal illustrations because they're so pretty. Look at this one. And then there's also like a cute, more Halloween coded one. Look at that. Again, I showed these in my vlog, but I just want to talk about them because I love them so much. But this was just a delightful read, honestly, and I enjoyed my time immensely going through it. Then getting back to some novels, I did also read The 10,000 Doors of January this month. I mainly picked this one up because it's been compared to The Starless Sea so much. And I definitely see why it's compared to The Starless Sea so frequently. I still prefer The Starless Sea but obviously I'm not really trying to pit them against each other, but like just out of the two, I like the Starless Sea more. But this is historical fantasy, so it's set in the early 1900s, I believe, and we are following our main character, January, who is staying in the mansion of her guardian while her father is away on business for a while. And in the very beginning of this book, it is revealed that January has the magical ability to open up doors to different worlds, and we kind of see that come into play and used in different ways throughout the story. But also in the beginning of the story, we see her as she finds this book in this mansion that is called The 10,000 Doors. And in that book, it is also recounting the story of a girl who finds a door to a different world and how her life changes because of that. So it's got that story within a story concept, and I have found that I absolutely love that in books. So if you have any recommendations as far as that goes, please let me know because I would love to pick them up. But I just loved how this story was told. I loved how the two stories that we were following, like the story in the book and January's story, I loved finding out how those were related. And I also just loved Alexi Harrow's writing style. I love her prose so much. I think her writing style is very beautiful. It's very descriptive, but it has like kind of a blunt edge to it that feels very distinct to her. I kind of felt the same way about her writing in Starling House as well, and I loved it then too. And I'm just so glad that I decided to pick this book up because I thoroughly enjoyed it. I don't think I enjoyed it quite as much as I thought I was going to, but I still felt like the story overall was very intriguing. I liked all of the characters that were in it, and I also really enjoyed the themes that were being explored as well. So overall, I would say if you like historical fantasy and you haven't picked this one up yet, I would definitely recommend. Then the next book that I want to talk about is A Sky Beyond the Storm by Hat Atier. We have finally completed our first series for Rivers and Words. If you guys don't know, the book club that I run with my bestie Cass, we started reading series this year, and the first one that we read was the An Ember in the Ashes Quartet, and we just finished it. However, I have some sad news. I didn't love this one. I thoroughly enjoyed the first two books in this series. I think this series started out so high, but then the third and the fourth books just really didn't like completely lose me because I liked it. I thought it was fine. I just feel like the series kind of petered out a bit towards the end. I felt like the characters were kind of acting out of character towards the end of the series. I think there was a lot of repetition happening, and I also just think the last two books were a little bit too long, which pains me honestly to say because I really enjoyed the first two. But if you guys want to hear more specific spoilery things as to why I didn't like this book, me and Cass did do a live show for this book specifically very recently on her channel, so I will link that down below if you're interested in hearing more spoilery thoughts. But this book was just a little bit of a disappointment for me, so yeah. Then we're going to move into what I'm calling the Brandon Sanderson section because I have 4 books that I would like to talk about quickly. I'm not going to spend too much time on these because, again, I have talked about these a lot, but I did read books 2 and 3 in Mistborn Era 2, and can I say, I am loving Era 2 so much. I'm having the best time reading it now. But if you guys don't know, Era 2 of Mistborn takes place like 300 years after the original trilogy, and just seeing the advancement in technology, seeing how certain things in the magic system have changed over that 300 years, it's just been so interesting to see. And I also just absolutely love the characters in Era 2. I feel like we're following a really solid group of people throughout this series, and I love them so much, and it's just so funny. Like, the dynamics that all of them have with each other are just so entertaining. And I'm about to make a bold statement here, but I think my enjoyment of books 2 and 3 in Era 2 is vastly higher than my enjoyment of books 2 and 3 in Era 1, which feels blasphemous, to be honest. Like, they're all still really good books. This is kind of just pitting like good books against good books, but that's just kind of where I'm at with it. Like, The Final Empire remains my favorite out of all of the Mistborn books that I've read so far. That one is so good, but books 2 and 3 in Era 1 get a little too political for what I typically enjoy reading in my fantasy. But these books are like the right amount of politics, action, character work, humor. I just feel like it's all a really good balance in this series. And I'm just shocked, honestly, because I just hear so many people talk about how they don't really like Era 2 that much. But I thoroughly enjoyed these, and I cannot wait to pick up The Lost Metal. I will be reading The Lost Metal in May, and I cannot wait. So yes, there's my surprising Mistborn update for you guys. Well, actually, it's not surprising, probably, because I've talked about this in vlogs already, but yeah. And then I also picked up Elantris this month, which I also thoroughly enjoyed Elantris. I talked about this book extensively in the vlog that I read it in, so if you guys want more thoughts on that, I will link that down below as well. I'll link like any vlogs down below that these books are featured in if you're curious. But part 1 of this book, kind of long, kind of slow, a little bit boring. But the thing is, when you get to part 2, everything starts to click into place, and I think it's just so well done, especially for a debut novel. I know a lot of people also say they don't really like Elantris that much, that they feel like it's his weakest work, and I definitely see why they say that, because I think the character work isn't as well done. I feel like all of these characters feel very static and they don't really change over the course of the story, and I also feel like the ending of this book wasn't super satisfying. I think there were a lot of plot conveniences happening for our characters, and I didn't love that either. I know that sounds like a lot of negative things, but like overall, I still just had a really good time reading this book because I loved the characters that were in this book. I also really enjoyed seeing how the magic system worked on this world. It's very kind of understated compared to some of Brandon Sanderson's other magic systems, but I still really liked it. And learning about any new Sanderson magic system is always an interesting time. And overall, I just really enjoyed this reading experience. I feel like once I got to the halfway point in this book, I kind of just binged the rest of it because I had to know what was going to happen next. There were so many plot threads that I needed to see come together, and I'm so glad that I finally got myself to pick it up because I've been putting this off for quite a while. Moving swiftly along, we are almost to the end. I do quickly want to talk about a couple of the stories that I read out of Arcanum Unbounded. This is a story collection from the Cosmere, so it involves stories from a lot of different planets that are in the Cosmere. So I read 2 stories out of here this month. The first one being The Hope of Elantris, which is a very, very short story. It's like 25 pages maybe. And it's basically the whole climactic battle scene of Elantris, but from a different point of view. I didn't absolutely love it. I don't really think it did much for me. I don't really think it added a whole lot to the story, but it was fine, and I'm glad that I did read it. And then the other story that I read out of here was, oh man, I forget what it's called every time. Shadows for Silence in the Forests of Hell, and this is from a planet in the Cosmere that I don't believe we've gotten a whole lot from. Is from the Threnodite system. And that one is set on a world that is kind of spooky, honestly. On that planet, there is this essentially haunted forest that our main character has to venture into. And in this forest, there are these spirits kind of that get really, really upset if you make any loud noises, or if there's something else that like really upsets them, and they will rip you to shreds essentially. And the only thing you can do to kind of ward them off is something to do with silver, I think. I liked this story. Again, it was fine. It wasn't my favorite thing, but I am glad that I read it because I do want to maybe finish up the stories that I haven't read out of here yet. There are a bunch of stories from the Scadrian system that I haven't read, which is where Mistborn takes place, and then there's some others on there that I need to read, but yeah. I also read this. And then the last book that I have to talk about that I read this month was Equal Rights by Terry Pratchett. This is the 3rd book in the Discworld series, which is a 40-book series. There are a bunch of different places where you can start in it. You don't have to read them chronologically, like I didn't. I started with the 3rd one. This is the start of the kind of witches sub-series in Discworld, and I loved this one so much. And this book introduces you to one of the main characters that is present throughout the entirety of this sub-series. Her name is Granny Weatherwax. I love her so much. She is such a fun character to follow. She's such a curmudgeonly, stuck in her way old witch, but she's also at the same time so endearing, and you cannot help but just enjoy her so much as a character. But in this one, she is following this little girl whose name is Esk, who is in a very unprecedented situation. She is basically the first female wizard. Now on Discworld, it is not a thing for women to become wizards. That is not allowed. But due to some events that transpire at the beginning of this book, Esk becomes the Disc's first female wizard. And this entire book is basically kind of just following her as she is meeting a lot of obstacles in her life due to the fact that she's the world's first female wizard. This book has a lot of commentary about challenging the status quo, kind of questioning why the status quo is the way it is. Because a lot of the time throughout this book, when Esk is asking somebody, like, why can't I be a female wizard? Their only response is just like, that's the way it is. Don't ask me why, but like, that's the way it is. And this whole book is kind of exploring kind of that general concept. And I really liked the balance of that commentary with the adventures that Granny Weatherwax and Esk were going on. But it was just delightful, honestly. And I'm so, so excited to read more of Discworld. So this is just the beginning of my journey. Got a lot of books ahead of me, but I'm so excited about them. And then at the very end here, I do quickly want to go through the books that I'm currently reading that I'm thinking I can finish some of these in April. One of these will probably spill into May, but I just wanted to tell you what I was in the middle of right now. So I do have another story out of Arcanum Unbounded that I'm currently reading, and that is Mistborn Secret History. I believe it is recommended that you read the story after you finish The Bands of Mourning, which I did just finish this month. So I honestly had no clue what Mistborn Secret history exactly was about. I knew the character that it followed, but I had no idea exactly what was going on in this novella. But none of what's happened is what I was expecting, and I think it's been really interesting so far, so cannot wait to finish that one up. I'm also currently in the middle of Weird Sisters, also another Discworld book. I'm about 175 pages into it, so I'm about halfway through. I'm loving this one too. This is kind of a riff on Macbeth, I think, because you're following like 3 witches, so it pulls a lot from the storyline of Macbeth. Now, I don't really know a lot about Macbeth. I know it involves 3 witches, but that's all I got. But I looked up like a general plot summary of it. So kind of seeing the parallels between what little I know about Macbeth and this book has been kind of interesting. But I love the 3 witches that you're following this book. They're my favorite part because again, you're following Granny Weatherwax and there are 2 other witches that have been introduced and it's just so fun. There's ghosts, there's witches, there's a traveling like performance company going on. It's just really fun. I'm enjoying it a lot. And then unfortunately, I'm still in the middle of, what is this called? The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King. Honestly, if I was not buddy reading this book with Elaine, I would have DNF'd it so fast. I still have the same complaints that I had about it in my one of my last vlogs. Some vlog I read it in. I still dislike this book, to be honest. But I have 300 pages to go and I'm no quitter, so me and Elaine are gonna do this together. I know we can do this together. I just don't love it. But with that, we have now officially arrived at the end of the video. The lighting looks awful, so I'm glad you don't have to look at this for much longer. So I really hope you guys enjoyed watching this wrap up. I feel like I read some fun books this month. I had a really good time with a lot of the ones that I picked up, so I hope you enjoyed hearing me chat through them a bit. Obviously, I would love to know down below what are some of your guys' favorite books that you've read this month, or if you're feeling shady, I would also love to know what some of your least favorite books that you read this month are. Also, before we go, I would like to thank everybody over on my Patreon. If you are ever looking for more content from me, that is always linked down below. Do some fun stuff over there. You can check it out if you are so inclined. But with that, I'm now going to let you guys go. Thank you again so much for watching, and I will see you all in my next video.